So, welcome everyone. Fascinating discussion for you today. We've got a wonderful panel lined up against this glass wall here. And the topic we're discussing today is how to build a super app super fast. We're really lucky. We've got, we're going to use the example of Sync as sort of our discussion point. And we've got a number of representatives from the constituent technology providers that went behind building out Sync in the functionality there. And we'll be using that as a discussion point, as well as discussing sort of broader trends in the market. For those of you listening in, love to hear your comments, questions. We'll have a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions throughout the discussion, put your questions in the comments box and we'll moderate that towards the end. My name is Richard Stockley. I am the Global Director of Partnerships here at Currencycloud. And what I'd like to do is introduce the panel I have here with me. If you guys could just introduce yourselves, what you do, and a little bit about the organizations you work for. I'll start with Ricky Lee.
Hi everyone, good morning. So I'm Ricky, I'm the CEO and founder at Sync, and right now heading a bit of the product and managing the whole type of product side within our company. So what we do, just briefly, we are known as a challenger bank, but the demand of our users nowadays is so high. Users don't want just banking, so they want that type of super app type of services where you've got trading and money transfers and the big known topic now of open banking and so on. So yeah, please feel free to visit sync.money.
Fantastic. Noel.
Morning everyone, I'm Noel Smith. I head of business development at Transact Payments Limited. Transact Payments are an e-money issuer out of the UK and out of Gibraltar, which covers for UK issuance, and out of Malta, which covers for the rest of the EEA issuance. We help regulated and non-regulated companies get access to the MasterCard and Visa rails. So we sponsor a number of programs which are in the market today.
And Dan?
Hey everyone, I'm Daniel Cronin, one of the co-founders of Integrated Finance. We are a banking as a service, aggregation and orchestration layer. Our customers use us typically to connect to multiple BaaS providers, compliance providers, and other auxiliary services to help them get live super fast with their partners of choice.
And David Rees.
I think last and least. Good morning everyone, my name is Dave Rees. I work at Currencycloud's Partnerships and Enterprise business. I realize I've been at Currencycloud, it feels like for more years than I haven't. And right now, Currencycloud, we are a platform that powers clients' cross-border payment requirements. So we specialize in receipt of money, the FX component of the transaction, and then the onward flow of funds to help beneficiaries. So pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Well, Ricky, you started off describing sort of the vision for Sync. Expand on that a little bit. Where did you start? What was the idea? What were you looking to achieve?
So me and my co-founder started as, I'm half British, half Spanish, and I think it was the whole money transfer side of things. And we had to move money back home in Spain, and that's within Europe when the UK was in Europe. And it was still very hard because of the FX side. And then, yeah, just big players nowadays. I think money transfers was just becoming outdated. And we can see that now there's a number of big players, unicorns, that have gone from money transfers more into more of a banking type of solution, offering many types of services like I've just mentioned on one app. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we started off with money transfers, but like a good fintech we have to innovate almost on a yearly and quarterly basis. There's one of the things we're looking at is crypto now. There's we can't escape it. The demand's out there. We have to have it. That's basically, we have to listen to our users if we want to keep going.
Tell us a bit more about the aggregation of different services that you're providing, that sort of super app or that experience that goes beyond just your original core.
Yeah, so I think when we started Sync was interesting because the whole name describes it, right? Synchronization. We wanted to sync bank accounts for people. So my background comes from one of the big unicorns now out back in the day. And it was just a banking service. And I think, I do like my Amex. I may want to bank with Barclays, and then because I'm half a foreigner, I do have a Santander and maybe a UAE bank and an American bank, right? So what we want to do is synchronize all that with one customer experience. Right now, banking apps are not the best to navigate through. They're not up to date. They don't offer any really cool features that fintechs do. So that's where Sync came through, was to aggregate all the bank accounts into one. Partly why we've got today here, Dan and Noel. And of course, Currencycloud is very important for us as part of our system. So yeah, that's where Sync came from.
I guess it's those aggregation of services, that's sort of the nexus for that definition of super apps. It's a very, acknowledge that it's a very, very broad definition, right? It can mean lots of things to lots of people. And I think, when you look at the global trends, often when I think of super apps in my background, I think of what's happening in Asia. And you look at sort of WeChat and Alipay, WeChat starting as a messaging service, then realizing that incumbent customer can be provided with other services and augment it. Now it's just, you can order groceries, you can do all sorts on it. Alipay, similar. I don't know if you guys, I was in Thailand over Christmas and I just lived through the Grab app, order taxis, order food, groceries, pay on it. And I think it's this aggregation of services, but it seems to have a very different regional flavor. I'd love to hear sort of people's thoughts on that. You've got not so much starting in the financial services space, but moving into it in the Asian market. And what we're seeing here in EMEA is the super app sort of starting in the financial services and then expanding out. You look at Revolut adding, investing opportunities and insurance and things like that. What do you think drives the difference between those regional differences? I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that.
So a smarter guy than me, a guy called Sam Babov, who works at StormPay, I reached out to him because he produces a lot of fantastic content on this sort of stuff. And when some of the UK unicorns were moving from being just a prepaid card into the super app space, I approached him and asked him, where is he getting all of his great content from? Does he know these guys? And he actually kind of laughed at me and said, what Europe is doing now is quite far behind some of the what has previously been termed less economically developed countries like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. And he highlighted it was the telecoms industries in Asia that really pushed for this. And the main reason was telecoms as a technology modal, I guess, skipped over and went light years ahead of the banking and financial services technologies. And so they amassed a much bigger aggregate market share of their local populace. And then because they had such a big market share, there was huge incentive for them to offer different services to them. Whereas if you look at Europe, the financial services market has been relatively mature for 15 to 20 years. So there was no need to improve on it. However, now that Europe has started falling behind in some of the access to the markets, you've got the M-Pesa in Africa, all of the telecoms and Chinese solutions as well. Financial services is now becoming the point of innovation in Europe. So financial services pushing its innovation into telecoms, I found.
And so you got Sync, aggregating services, bringing all these accounts together, offering cards, offering, there's a marketplace, offering a remittance, offering currency solutions. I'm just interested from the panel here, we've got some of your core constituent parts. If maybe we go through those and just understand what each player provided. Noel, if I can start with you.
Sure. So Sync contracted with us a few years ago to get access to the MasterCard rails. At the time, Sync wasn't regulated at the time. Right. So they also were utilising our EMEA license for us to hold the client funds, etc. So what we did for Sync was we implemented a bin on their behalf. So it's Sync's exclusive bin. We populated that bin to cover all of Sync's growth plans, so not just for UK, obviously for the rest of Europe. We also linked all the currencies which they wanted to transact on their card. but more importantly, we ensure that the card program is actually compliant with all the regulations, not just home regulator, but local regulations, to make sure that there's going to be no issues once they went live in certain jurisdictions, and made sure the MasterCard are obviously happy with the overall product construct. On an ongoing basis, we do all the settlement to MasterCard. We have to do any regulatory reporting. We do all the reconciliation from the processor. So in a nutshell, we give them access to the MasterCard rails.
David Rees.
Yes, as we discussed earlier, so Currencycloud, in our essence, we are a cross-border first organization. And when you think about moving money across borders, there are three core components to the transaction, which is the receipt of funds, the exchange of money from one currency to another, and then the onward distribution of money to a third-party account. So Currencycloud, we've taken that, and the products that service that are very much a virtual IBAN solution. So giving that ability for Sync's customers to actually load money into their multi-currency wallets, the FX component, so the near to wholesale real-time exchange rate of one money to another, and then on the disbursement to the recipients. I think it's safe to say that Currencycloud by ourselves, we're very rarely the absolute core or center to any sort of product offering, but we're a very, very important order qualifier. I mean, Ricky, you discuss your experiences. You've got UK and Spanish and time in Dubai, time in the US. There are certain, global citizens who need that currency to the core sort of experience in any sort of like financial services. But even those who, like my dearest myself, who I don't travel around the world every day, but I still have a need to usually make payments overseas every now and again. And just having that embedded with the app, it really speaks to that super app capabilities and requirements that you don't need to go outside of the edges of your core product and your mobile phone.
And Dan Cronin, Integrated Finance.
I suppose the simplest way you could describe us is the glue of the connective tissue of those components. We really were the benefactors of Ricky and his team's exhaustive due diligence on each vendor that they wanted to work with. Often people will pick someone who does roughly what you want to achieve to go live, but Ricky was very specific about what his customer offering wanted to be, and he identified key partners that were quite different to each other in which part of the pie that they were tackling. Integrated finance is the aggregation of all of those individual components into, for young companies, a core, but for slightly more mature companies like Sync, we were their banking as a service gateway. So some of the services have mild overlap, but generally APIs are quite different in the BaaS space, and Integrated Finance job was to deal with that complexity so that Ricky and Sync could focus their engineering talents on producing a super app.
Could I just give a nutshell?
Of course.
Yeah. So as a product I am, to give you a bit of an understanding, let's just say there's a core banking system, there's a central CMS, and on that we've got various microservices. One of them is payments, and for us to access MasterCard or Visa or any fintech wants to access a card scheme, you need an issuer. That's where TPL comes in. They instead of us issuing, and I tell you what, that's one of the most complicated sides of our company, is the whole MasterCard scheme side. So TPL comes in hand in hand. Currencycloud, very important for us. Yes, we have to have, like we mentioned, banking as a service, maybe for the UK, for specific countries, or for Europe. Currencycloud we use on the side for FX more, because our target audience is more towards the ones that want to, foreigners that live in different countries within UK or Europe, need to keep GBP in Britain, but have euros, someone like myself, because I pay bills over in Spain, I pay bills maybe in New York, I need US dollars. That's what Currencycloud, and I tell you what, they're the best in the market. We've made a mistake. So whoever wants to reach out to me and ask me before going with partners, I can direct them in a good way, because we've spent a year just waiting. So getting your right partner is important. And then Integrated Finance has become one of our last partners, but most important. So instead of putting HR and trying to gain good developers that understand this industry, because remember, it's regulated, you need good people, good developers. And that's where integrated finance comes, and Dan's background can just, say it all. So that part is he integrates different issuers, compliance providers, different partners. That saves us thousands of pounds a month because we just get it done from day one and properly.
And sticking with you, Ricky, that journey from sort of idea to getting something live in the market. Walk us through your experience there.
Well, okay, so I did part of my initial, part of the initial founding team at Revolut. Started with Nikolai and Vlad and Matt those days, and look, Nikolai was onto something actually incredible. I wanted to be a Skyscanner of money transfers. Partly those are the days I met Dan, because his background's from FX and so on. So we had back then a aggregator of money transfers, and I realized that the whole industry, and I think my big moment was when TransferWise actually changed from a money transfer company more bringing out a card, and that made me think they've got a big team behind them. They must have done a big research if money transfers will not exist. And we were right. There's companies like TransferWise, Revolut now that are just going into all these different countries, and I can now move money to Australia, to New York instantly. Why? Because they've got accounts over there, they move good money. So that's where the whole industry was shifting. So you can see I always talk about FX and money transfers. That is my little niche, but we've had to now take on good experts to go into crypto.
And then bringing on the constituent parts. Noel, you talk passionately about sort of that journey that different fintechs and founders can go on between building it all themselves and having control, but the complexity of that control versus more of a one-stop shop. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the two routes to market, really what people can look at is a one-stop shop, or the route Ricky took, which was connecting to every part of the ecosystem directly. If you go to the one-stop shop, it does obviously bring some benefits. Speed to market, maybe quicker, because they're typically putting you on a shared bin range, so it wouldn't be a bin which solely for your use. They're connected to all the ecosystems, so you're not having to contract in with multiple parties, etc. So there is advantages, but the disadvantages are with the one-stop shops, you're having to utilize the supply chain that they've chosen. So, for instance, processing engines, which are a key part of a card program. So they might be sitting in front of a processing engine which doesn't give the functionality which would complement the product like Sync. With going to a one-stop shop as well, if say you want to grow in the future, or if you're not happy with any part of the supply chain, it's a lot harder to move in the future, because you'd be connected to a platform which you're going to have to break away from and connect directly to a processing engine directly. And more importantly as well, as if you move processors or move issuers, typically you can't take the bin with you, so you're going to have to implement a new bin on your behalf, which would then involve recarding all your card holders, got different PAN number on the card. So coming to the direct approach with a bit of sponsorship, like what Sync did, we were able to pick the best in class of all parts of the ecosystem. And also at Transact, what we try and do is we help companies grow to a point where if they wanted to become a principal member in their own right, which most companies do have aspirations for, the way we set them up and the way they're set up, like with Sync, they have direct access to the processing engine, direct access to integrated finance and yourselves. It's quite easy for them to change partners or become a principal member, because on your own bin you can literally just pick it up and move it with you. So obviously work evolved around that, but you can actually move the bin with you and grow that way.
Presumably there's an enormous complexity in sort of managing that whole, from a technology perspective, from a regulatory perspective. Dan, I know this is where integrated finance kind of provide, abstract a bit of that complexity. You have a wonderful analogy around sort of flavor and allowing sort of people to focus in different areas.
Sure. Well, I'll briefly go back. Before we launched integrated finance, the team ran an electronic money institution, and the main challenge we found is that we had a vision on what our product would look like, what we would be doing for our customers, but we spent all of our time trying to fix IBAN sequencing, data formats for sending payments to sort codes in community banks, FX revenue generation, all of the stuff that never once would you hear a person get excited about. And so what we realized is we were investing all of our time in stuff that our customers didn't really care about, but somebody would, and that somebody is people trying to launch fintechs. And one of the reasons we launched integrated finance was actually we saw guys like Ricky who had such high demands of what they wanted their product to do, but through their existing partners at the time or anyone else, they were still spending too much energy on the basest ingredient of finance, which is how do I open a bank account? How do I perform a currency exchange? Which side of the currency pair? All of the stuff, hopefully you're yawning at if you're watching this. All of that stuff that nobody really cares about and doesn't make a compelling product. Whereas what Sync we're trying to do is figure out what is the lifestyle of the user? What non-financial aspect of their life am I trying to engage with and give them a financial experience rather than a financial service? So what I'd say to anyone looking at getting into this market, whether you're a pre-revenue founder with a twinkle in your eye, or a multinational that's looking to monetize a loyal and existing customer base, is focus on what flavor your customers need, what is going to make a difference to their life, because just issuing a bank account won't. There's thousands of people that will do that. You need to focus on all of the touch points that your customer will interact with. So if it's a mobile app, what features on that mobile app will change that person's life? If it's a web application for B2B, what's going to change the CFO's life or the financial controller's life? Think about what their daily routines are and how can you interact with that in a seamless way. Focus on the flavor that's going to make your business different to everyone else's, because the bases have been covered perfectly by most of the participants in BAS now.
So we've got like all the constituent parts, right? We've got the people who know their domains, thinking about those domains and only think about those domains. So we've got like Ricky found a vision thinking about customer experience. You've assembled a team under you of different partners that provide those building blocks, and then the glue to make them all talk together. But I'm really curious also to talk about, that's on paper that looks brilliant, but we're all sort of burdened by our reptilian brains and how we actually collaborate and how we actually work together. David Rees, if I could get your thoughts on sort of what made, we use this partnership as a talking point. What got us off the page and actually working together in a way that was that meant we could deliver with speed?
So it's an excellent question. I think it's been touched upon so far in the conversation where all the people on this panel, we sort of said we have our scars and we know frequently what doesn't work. Certainly I do, because I've made those mistakes for the last 10 years. So there's a degree of authenticity when we come together and start talking about solving the customer problem, because we know what doesn't work because we've tried in the past. There's also, dare I say, and it's probably one of the most important factors to discuss, is there's a cultural alignment within this partnership ecosystem, and certainly with this partnership on the panel today, where it's so focused on being customer centric. So what problems are we solving? Does it make a meaningful difference for the end user? Does it make a difference for Ricky and his team so he can go and focus on a terrific UX while we extract all of that complexity and just take the boring stuff off the table? That's not a headache that has to worry about anymore. From another standpoint, there's also the more tactical ways of working together, which is like we all know each other and we can all either pick up the phone or we can have like group Slack conversations. We have daily stand-ups. We did a lot of things to make sure that we're all swimming behind the one narrative that Sync wanted to create this incredible super app for their end users and capture that market share. So all of these factors combined really do lend themselves to this overarching North Star, which is any good partnership ecosystem. There's a desire to create more value than you ultimately capture. Because if it's the converse and people are trying to monetize more than they actually create, then the partnership will just eat itself and fall apart. Whereas you have people who constantly want to give and try and explore new ways of doing things and make the overall product better, then it really is, it sounds a little bit pithy, but the sky's the limit.
And then speed is obviously critical, right? And I think we took this live in 2 or 3 months or something.
Speed and cost.
Speed and cost. Speed and cost.
Always.
Ricky, your thoughts on that trade-off between achieving the vision and the functional outcomes that you wanted to deliver versus the speed of delivery. Was there a conscious trade-off between those two, or did you find that the methodology that was in place allowed you to elevate above that? I'm interested if that was a concern of yours.
Of course, it's not at the beginning, right? Because you want to build everything. I wanted to build everything in-house. You're naive, especially as a founder. You go through, there's no weekends, there's no bank holidays. Your every day starts at 5:30 in the morning. And you start thinking on how you can get to speed to market. One of the things I've actually just learned at the beginning of this year with our investors is numbers. Analytics is the most important. You need to reach users.
Yeah.
I unfortunately my background was more product that I wanted a perfect product to go out.
Mm-hmm.
But people are already using other banks. Why would they use you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you learn from your mistakes. And then the cost of bringing it in-house, you need to train these designers and developers. How can a young designer come in? And I say young, even 30, that's never opened a business and, design a business banking customer experience for you when it hasn't run a bank account.
Yeah.
So I think, for us to choose integrated finance and our partner TPL and Currencycloud it's a no-brainer. You pay one amount, you go directly to the professionals, and you can then demand, right? With your developers or designers, you've got 8 hours, 5 days a week. That's it.
Yeah.
And Dan's been great since he's opened this company. I remember, you've done 7 days a week. 24 hours.
That's why we like Dan, having Dan around.
Yeah. Taking him with him.
We were talking about, that word agility gets thrown around really far too often. But I wanted to go to David Rees and talk about sort of not so much agility, but how do you break down and frameworks breaking down a grand vision into something that can be executed against?
Yeah, it's important just to draw on Ricky's point, talk about as a founder, you wanted to launch the perfect product. And then the recognition after all, that's a little bit naive because there's no such thing. And it's certainly also to your comment at the very start of the panel, which was you've got to innovate on an annually and quarterly basis based on customer demand. And those sort of components are really, really important to think about when you look at the overall partnership strategy and the partnership ecosystem. Picking your partners is basically picking the right problem that you want to solve for your customer, and then finding the partner that will complement that. The idea that you can not own all parts of the stack and all parts of the functionality, and you can outsource to the subject matter experts and focus on what you want to be famous for. And I think that's certainly something that I've learned, but also working again alongside Dan, you're getting a lot of compliments here, but the idea is that we don't necessarily know in 12 to 18 months or even 2 years' time what sync will look like, other than the fact that it will probably be different to what it is today. But to have that flex and to maybe bring in more partners to support your crypto ambitions, or more partners to support your open banking capabilities, or X, Y, and Z, all of these things, you've almost got to build that mindset into the organization at the day one, which is whatever we're doing is not fixed in place for any given period of time, and it must be flexible. And I think having the various partners sitting here now who have that shared mindset that we're never finished is probably the closest I can put to having that agility concept within a partner ecosystem.
I guess because we can relate to it, right? All our organizations are actually moving in the same and evolving at a rapid pace, like our clients. So I guess there's a synergy in sort of the experience and the passion for sort of that agility.
Just the final point is the desire certainly is, when you talk about compromising, dare I say, quality for speed or cost, I think one of the things that any good partnerships ecosystem should try and do is try and mitigate that as much as possible. And certainly as you're looking at the rise of super apps, the barrier for entry is just getting higher and higher and higher. You touched on this, you can't just offer someone a bank account anymore because who cares? no more gold plated than anyone else's. But the idea to be able to do that quickly, to iterate and then to bolt on additional services and expand into other parts of either the financial or social world of our customers is paramount.
And you talk about sort of that connection and that having building blocks and not owning different parts of this stack. No, you talk about sort of those connections and having connections to those pieces rather than being abstracted from it.
Yeah, so having the direct connections to all parts of the ecosystem, I think is vital if you want to build the product exactly to your spec. And going back on what Dave said before as well, it's being able to pick the phone up to each part of the ecosystem and get things done. Because if you're going through, it's one of the disadvantages with a one-stop shop. You tend to be speaking to the provider who will then raise the queries with the processor, the KYC provider, or the car bureau, for example. And if we look at using Sync as an example as well, the amount of waivers we had to get just on car design alone, if they went through a one-stop shop, they probably wouldn't have got the finished article of.
Yeah, unpack that a little bit. Sort of what you've seen, scars you've seen of that sort of that abstraction, one layer too far away, causing problems to try and get something done.
Yeah, so Ricky chose a specific car bureau because the colours and the spec, etc. He wanted, and if you went through a one-stop shop provider, you'd have to rely on a car manufacturer who could have produced the plastic, obviously, but maybe not to the exact spec he wanted to. And that's just one example. There's other examples such as like KYC. KYC providers have access to different data sets in different countries. So again, going through a one-stop shop provider, they might be using a certain provider who only provide KYC data for a handful of countries in Europe, and you need to go further afield. So again, having direct access, you could pick multiple KYC providers. I think you chose multiple providers for your car manufacturing, personalization, and packaging. Yeah. So Ricky got the uniqueness of his car design from going direct to the bureau. And if you had any issues, you could speak to the bureau direct, which you wouldn't have. You went through like a one-stop shop.
But then, so you access to best in class and bespoke functionality that may be important to you, given your region or what you're trying to achieve. But then gluing it all together, Dan, you are that glue. How does that actually work in practice? How does it, are there trade-offs? Is there actually friction in terms of how you can swap things out? How do you find it with your clients?
So I suppose the thing you're always trying to juggle is not asking your customer to ask their customers for more information. So if you take the simplest example in the United Kingdom, making a faster payment, what is the mandatory data you need to collect to be able to send a faster payment? It's a sort code and an account number, which is validated. And on occasion, you need to take the name and validate it. Sometimes some banks can't actually do the validation. But there are other parties who can issue a faster payment that will require data that's not scheme mandatory. So not requested by the scheme to facilitate the payment, but the specific payment provider either has hard-coded logic that says, I need more information, I need a date of birth, or I need an address. And so what you don't want for your customer, you don't want your customer to say, get everything that you ever might possibly need to make this payment, because when the average person in the street has to fill in all of that data, it's going to discourage them from using you versus, say, another solution that asks for less information. The flip side to that is, if anyone changes the requirements, so let's say one day Currencycloud was to say, we've been taking sort code and account number and name, but now we need a date of birth. My integration needs to abstract that, but it's still going to have a knock-on effect for Ricky's customer, because one day Ricky's customer is going to log into the app and it's going to ask for more information for someone he's paid 50 times. And it then becomes Ricky's choice. Does he want to mitigate that eventuality by getting more information from his customer up front, or does he want to keep it as slick as possible in the early days so that there's no friction or barrier to entry for his customers? My job is to, based on the decision Ricky makes, there needs to be no technical load for his team to perform that transaction. And then that gives Ricky the optionality to decide, give me all of the information, give me the minimum amount of information, or tell me when I need more information.
Mhm.
Like that's probably the simplest example of what we're trying to achieve.
And so, Currencycloud, integrated finance, Transact payments, all very much in the plumbing, doing the boring stuff behind the background. For the benefit, in this example of Sync, Ricky, tell us where you're at now. What's Sync doing? How is it all working?
So good. Just focusing now on reaching out to the market. We unfortunately wanted to launch in March. Was it now? With COVID, I forgot. Two years ago, March. So that was what, 2020, and COVID hit. So then we also had a big problem, as knows, with one of our partners, and then Brexit hit us. And unfortunately, our cards, I can tell the story now because I think it's quite funny, but our cards were printed in Wuhan. So, we couldn't launch when
did something happen there in 2020?
I heard something really big, major happened there. Yeah. No, we can laugh about it now in a good way. But, we've got very good investors that have backed us up. It's been a bit of a tough year. Also, the market's changed, right? So you can't just go in as a banking product. Spain, I can speak about quickly, is a great country to actually launch banking, because someone like my brother pays 15 euros minimum for banking, for a bank, unless you've got a minimum of 2,500 euros coming in. I mean, banks, people think banks make money. No, banks don't make money. So, we make money when we offer the super app services, the trading, the bond, if mortgages and credit and, now crypto. So that's what we've been looking at. We've got a hell of a good product. We've been just putting our head down, getting 2 years of really good development done with our partners. Now we've got a product that's, just can money transfer integrated. One of the last finishes we've just done is integrating 69 corridors across the world, instant settlement payments. Right. So again, I think really good, but I'm always watching out for what's next.
And in that vein, what's super apps, the aggregation of services that we're seeing in EMEA starting the financial and bridging out, seeing in Asia starting outside financial services and moving in. What do you see? What's the future of super apps? So
I'm really focused looking right now at business side of business, offering businesses. I think mums and dads, like I call them, we've got great options out there, right? You've got the likes of Revolut, Monzo, Starling, great companies, especially France and Germany, Holland. Everyone's coming out with Lithuania now. We're coming out with a couple. I think we're just now competing against them. But on the business side, I think there's still a lack of managing a business. And I can tell you, because I'm trying to manage our business where we've got people that we pay in euros, GBP, and again euros, because or Gibraltar. So that's what we need to look at. So we're really looking at a business side within the company. I know the bear market's coming out a bit with crypto. So, but again, we've almost got it done. So
fantastic. Reece, your thoughts on the market and super apps? Should we be worried?
Should we be worried? Constantly. I think there's certainly the general consensus for me would be that the super app is very much is here to stay, and it's here to take a bigger portion or solve a bigger portion of my problem. Certainly day to day, I loathe having to have anything more than one app on my phone because I'm incredibly lazy. And the fact you can have one single point of just to manage, dare I say, the general balance, the current account, the savings, any loans or credit, to have that all somewhere which is really easy to consume, super transparent, so I'm confident I'm getting a good rate and not being ripped off by any one provider. That's a really compelling value proposition for me as an individual, and I like that. Certainly, are there going to be lots and lots of super apps? I would hypothesize probably not, given the fact that you need that flywheel, you need the economies of scale and enough people to use and not solve enough problems. So are we going to have 40 or 50? Of course not. Are we going to have a couple of big ones that could probably dominate the market for a considerable period of time? I could believe that. Again, I don't know.
Agree with that? No? One app to rule them all?
I agree with partly with what Dave was saying there. I think it'll be here to stay, but I think because our industry is constantly evolving, as is the world in general. I think unless the apps are going to constantly evolve, I think there's going to be more coming out there who are connected to the new best in classes as such. So from a payment side, it might be a new processing engine, or it might be a new Currencycloud, for example, who they want to connect to build a super app as such.
Mm-hmm. And do you see, follow-up question, do you see the financial nexus of European super apps extending outside of sort of finance into messaging, groceries, almost in the reverse of what we see in Asia Pacific?
I do, but I don't know exactly when that will happen. But it's, again, echo what Dave said. From my perspective, if I had an app which could order my takeaway and do my banking and everything, I would just have that one app on my phone. And I don't know of any really which are quite popular in the European space at the moment. So I think it's going to come at some point.
And lastly, part-time futurologist, Dan.
For me, it's just, where is it easiest for market adoption to occur? With the internet, then Google, and then Amazon, with web services as well, it enabled everyone to sell one product all over the world. So there was a proliferation of e-commerce solutions. You saw the likes of World First, early days currencies, direct pay near, do huge market adoption there. In the last 10 years, it's been the gig economy. So with Deliveroo, with Getir, these people have got substratas of almost humanity, thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are experiencing a similar sort of lifestyle with the same sorts of demands and problems. So it makes sense for the gig economy to have a solution delivered for it. We're now seeing that in SME banking, where if there's going to be a popularization of a specific type of business or a way of doing business, someone's going to come in and move to adopt that, and the innovation will typically happen where the user growth occurs. In Europe, that's financial services at the moment. So
I don't know if any of us are qualified to answer this question, but the other looming sort of element of friction or definitely complexity is around regulation. Do you think that is that a net contributor to the proliferation of super apps, or does it hold it back? Ricky, what are your thoughts?
I can speak about, the FCA have been great. I mean, in every single way. For us, it was a time record to get our license, and they were very, very helpful. Lithuania, the same. You've got other countries that unfortunately don't, fit that matter right now. But no, I think right now it's good.
And then more of a sort of a business question around the market. In the last couple of years, fintech space been, in terms of VC and money going around, has been relatively frothy. You see what people are raising in the last year, and it's just been kind of eye-watering. Senses that's tightening up with geopolitical things happening, interest rates, etc. I presume in the last 5 years, a lot of the driver of fintechs has been on client acquisition over everything else. Just acquire customers. That's been the metric of success. Do you see that with the tightening of funding, that pendulum will switch or start to move back towards more revenue-centric or profit-centric metrics?
100%. But I've said it for the last, this bubble's now bursting, and I can see it just going more on the B2B side. You would never think, but back in the day in our company, still we say, if you're a B2B, you never become a unicorn, or it takes you longer to be a unicorn. You can't say that about Currencycloud, can we? So look at it, and integrated finance, one of the young startups now, but I can just see great team, great experience behind it, making money, powering other companies like us that we depend on our partners. I think the cards are shifting, right? And it's not about, what I heard it the other day, $2,000, the cost per user is how the VCs are seeing it on a challenger bank. Please explain to me that. We're giving it out everything for free. It takes us time to build money. I'm speaking the truth right now. I'm being transparent. That's why we need to look at other ways of making money. And that's partly what we've been doing at Sync for the last 12 months, a bit more.
There's some questions coming in. So I'm going to shift gears and call out a few of those. There's been some really interesting ones. But keeping with you, Ricky, what would you do differently if you could build Sync again?
I would, look, I'm going to be open about it. I'm more of a B2B guy. And I think we would have taken Sync more towards, it was discussions a couple of years ago when COVID hit that, I was in touch then with, I can now say M&S Bank that are not performing any banking services and other big partners. All the big banks are looking for fintechs like us. I don't think their solution is to buy a fintech because we lose that hunger. I think you need to actually pay them a monthly fee. And I think that's what anyone out there now, if you're looking at something, remember the markets are going down. Everyone's talking about the recession. More we talk about it, more it will come. So look at it more, taking what we do towards the banks, because unfortunately you speak to the banks. I can tell you we need 13 partners to do a challenger bank. The banks, you speak to a CEO of a bank, one of them didn't know what an issuer was. And I was quite surprised. So us youngsters, I think I would take it more towards the B2B and offering that service.
And a follow-on question, how should or how are banks responding to the rise of super apps? No, I don't know if you have any insights there.
I think banks in general, not some of the newer banks, like the Monzos, for example, some of the older banks, I don't think they're adapting very well because a lot of their infrastructure is quite archaic, to be quite honest with you, so they can't really adapt to what the customers need. So some of the functionality is really, really limited. But I think some of the newer banks, they're adapting really well.
Dan, one for you. I wonder how you collaborate across the various partners on changes to any one individual system that may inadvertently affect others in the supply chain.
So I suppose if anyone's gone onto our API docs, what it says fairly early in it is we will never make a breaking change. That puts an enormous load on us technically to ensure that such a change wouldn't directly impact the customer. What we do with our best partners is we have a pretty solid engagement where we can see much further into the future than normally we otherwise would. So if there is going to be a change that is going to have a corresponding impact on what we do, or it's going to need someone like Ricky to make a customer experience decision, we know about it early. We come to an agreement on what is going to be the best time for change, method of change, and what the corresponding consequence would be. And it won't be the same for every customer. We might need to make a small change for new functionality, or maybe a partner spotted a bug in their code that they're having to rectify. In some instances, there'll be a customer of ours who doesn't want any impact on client experience, in which case it's our job to effectively abstract that variable. But in another instance, a product manager might say, actually, the changes is causing, I want that exposed to my SME client base. So it's actually a two-sided thing where, one, we engage with our partners to ensure we've got advanced awareness of what's coming down the pipe to make sure it doesn't impact our client experience. And two, if there is an option, we give it to our customer to say, this is how things will work in the future.
So that's a core part of your value proposition, is to abstract that complexity and then also diminish the risk of those changes causing an impact on the client experience.
Yeah, just to push that a little bit further, there's sometimes where a client wants to do the same thing with two different partners, and either both can or both can't. But where the challenge is when one can and one can't. So a pricing module, super simple. Some partners have pricing APIs where when a payment occurs, you can send a subsequent matching API call to say, now take a fee. Whereas others don't have that API endpoint. So we've built a pricing module that can manufacture a similarity between two separate APIs. A lot of customers use that, especially around Currencycloud, where we can add value to your APIs by making sure their experience won't change by interacting with you.
Great question here. Talking about super apps and one app that does everything. Question here is, isn't the one app that does everything, isn't it called a browser? I wonder if people have any comments then on the bridge between accessing the World Wide Web through our machines versus something on an app.
Probably throw my 2 cents worth again. The underlying context that I'm incredibly lazy, and even the concept of more than a couple of clicks or a thumbprint is too much of a burden for me. So the idea to have everything just nicely consolidated in one app where it's transparently exposed and easy to consume, I think that is doing more than a browser. So that would be my 2 cents worth. Again, there are other people who specifically like to compartmentalize their financial experience, and that's fine. At which point your super app is indeed your browser, and how you store all your passwords in one lockbox. That's up to yourself.
Any other chime in on that one? I love that question. It's fantastic, right? Because this is a trade-off, right? It's a trade-off between convenience and experience versus access and.
Actually, just to develop my point, I just want to really think about this a bit more. So the idea of the browser as well, you have to deliberately go and search for something. So you know that you have a problem or a requirement. And what I love about innovation, certainly innovation in this space, is sometimes something or someone comes along and presents me with a solution to a problem that I didn't even appreciate I had, because it was such an ingrained part of my day-to-day experience. So when someone goes and presents a really slick solution for somebody who says, that gives me so much more time back than what I even realized I was giving away, that's where it takes it beyond that simple, how many tabs do you have open in Google Chrome.
And what do you think those functionalities are? We've got experience this here locally in Europe of having very financially focused, and we know the majors, right? We've got bank accounts, transfers, cards, investing, crypto. There's probably a few others around there. What are the things we're not thinking about? What are the wacky, maybe even non-financial things that could be bolted onto that to create an experience which is net new?
For me, it really, to give a general answer to that, is kind of the antithesis of what we're actually trying to achieve. What we should be focusing on is contextualizing the experience. So someone we're talking with at the moment, they're an email client, and what do people do more regularly in their inbox than they would otherwise do elsewhere? If you're a business, you'll 99 times out of 100 receive an invoice into your inbox. Rare is the day that I get or send an invoice via WhatsApp to somebody. So there's a huge need in the B2B space to potentially contextualize part of the banking experience into your inbox. Imagine a situation where on Gmail or on Hotmail, your email could recognize an invoice, highlight, and with one click, it opens your banking app and releases that payment. Those are the types of experiences that will impact millions and billions of people's lives. So for me, it's think about, what does the person do in there every day? How can you insert a financial experience that stops them having to leave that? When you consider the use cases like that, it becomes much more obvious what the future is going to be. So I think you guys are big on embedded finance. The German term is actually better, in my opinion. It's contextual finance. But participating on those journeys will make you a super app, because you'll get huge customer acquisition and you'll solve more and more of their problems as they spend more of their time using your system.
And then Ricky, a question for you around trust. Traditional banks are typically more, and it is inverted commas, so it's a trusted, right? I think that's a relative term, but traditional banks are typically more trusted than newer banks. Is there a behavioral shift in prioritizing convenience over trust? And can super apps establish that trust, or how do they establish that trust?
They can, right? I remember the day I was introduced to Facebook, and I was like, Facebook, that whole name. think about it.
When it used to be called the Facebook.
The Facebook. So, you think, what a ridiculous name. You start off, so, branding background, of course, I'm going to defend branding as number one, right? Colors have a big impact when foreigners come to the UK. Why are the numbers there and they go to Lloyd's more than Barclays? That's something to look at. Why is it? Is it because it's the biggest bank? Is it because it's got more branches? Is it because of the green color? Why do people speak more about it? So again, you've got already, Monzo had that, right? Built an incredible community when they launched. I mean, they were number one for a long time until recently. So I think, again, you have to, one of the things fintechs fail is customer support, big time. I mean, it's horrible. At least I can pick up a phone to my Lloyds Bank, my Barclays, my Santander, speak to someone, or at least when I chat with someone a bit more respectful and reasonable.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the fintechs are not gaining, and not looking at why is Amex still number one on customer support on that side. They shouldn't be going. They've got one of the worst apps out there. I'm sorry to say. Hopefully it pushes them to renew and give that incredible experience. But I think that's what we need, right? And we're losing what customer experience, customer support is. Once you've done that, then your brand automatically starts to create trust. But the new banks are the fintechs. It's going to take a bit longer, but it will be.
Look, that's probably a good place to wrap it up. For those of you who asked questions that we didn't quite get to, we'll be addressing those and sending it out to the attendees. So we won't forget about you. Thank you for all the wonderful questions that have come in, and thank you very much to the panel. Great to have you here. Great to have your insights on sort of what we're doing and what we're seeing in the market, and how pulling all those aggregated services together actually practically look like. The constituent parts are relatively boring, but hopefully we've talked about their importance and where they do, and then really importantly, again, finishing on that point, that trust, that experience. How do you bring all those services together in a way that's consumable? For those of you who tuned in today, thank you very much. I really hope it was informative. Please reach out to myself or any of the actors here today. Pleasure to talk to you and see you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.